The morning of the wedding felt calm and bright as the sun slowly rose over the quiet town and sent a soft golden glow across the streets. Everyone seemed excited because Adam and Mira were finally getting married after many years of knowing each other and sharing a friendship that turned into a gentle love. The town had watched them grow from shy school children into caring adults who always helped others and carried kind hearts. People often said their bond felt natural, like two pieces that always belonged together, and this made the wedding feel special to everyone. Adam woke up early because he wanted the day to be perfect. He arrived at the venue before anyone else and walked around the decorated area, checking each flower and candle to make sure it looked right. He fixed petals that had fallen and straightened ribbons that were slightly out of place. He wanted Mira to step into a scene that would stay in her memory for all her life. Even though he tried to stay calm, his hands shook slightly because he knew this day carried meaning for both of them, and he wanted it to reflect the love they had built. When Mira arrived, she stepped out of the car with a soft and peaceful smile. Her dress flowed around her like a gentle cloud, and everyone turned to look at her with admiration. Her friends whispered about how beautiful she looked, and her mother wiped tears from her eyes because the moment felt emotional. Mira looked around the venue, and then her eyes stopped on Adam, who was standing near the arch waiting for her. The moment their eyes met, the world seemed to pause, as if nothing else existed but the two of them. Mira walked slowly with her father by her side, and each step carried a mix of joy and nervousness. When her father placed her hand into Adam's hand, there was a warm calmness in the air. The ceremony began with soft music, and the voices of the guests faded as Adam and Mira focused only on each other. Their vows were simple because they both believed that love did not need heavy words to be strong. Adam promised to create a peaceful life for them, and Mira promised to support him through every path they would walk together. Their voices were steady but filled with a gentle sincerity that touched everyone watching. When the person leading the ceremony announced that they were now husband and wife, the crowd clapped with happiness, and the sound echoed around the hall. The guests threw petals as Adam and Mira walked down the aisle holding hands with bright smiles on their faces. Many people took photos of them while others cheered loudly because the moment felt full of joy. After the ceremony, the couple spent time with their guests and laughed with their friends. Mira hugged her mother tightly as her mother kept telling her how proud and happy she felt. Adam shook hands with his uncles and cousins who joked about how he should be ready for marriage life. Through all the laughter and conversations, Adam kept glancing at Mira with a warm smile because he still could not believe the moment was real. The reception hall was decorated with soft lights hanging across the ceiling and golden cloth wrapped around the tables. A gentle fragrance of flowers filled the air, and the tall wedding cake stood as the centerpiece near the stage. When Adam and Mira entered the hall, everyone stood and clapped again. Mira held Adam's arm and whispered that she felt nervous seeing everyone look at them, but Adam whispered that she looked beautiful and she should enjoy the moment. Their first dance began soon after. They had practiced secretly for weeks, even though they told everyone they were not good dancers. When the music started, Adam placed his hand on Mira's waist, and she rested her hand on his shoulder, and they moved gently across the floor. The room fell silent as the couple danced with soft smiles because they seemed lost in their own world. When the song ended, the guests clapped loudly, and Mira laughed from happiness. They continued greeting everyone and thanking them for coming. A small group of older relatives stood near the corner, whispering among themselves while looking toward the door with worried expressions, but Mira did not understand what they were talking about. She decided to ignore it and focus on the celebration. After some time, the couple prepared to leave for their short private getaway. Guests followed them outside and gathered near the car, throwing petals and cheering as Mira and Adam walked hand in hand. Adam opened the door for Mira, and she stepped inside with laughter and excitement. He walked around the other side and sat beside her. They waved at everyone as the car drove away, leaving behind the noise of celebration and entering the quiet evening roads. Mira leaned her head on Adam's shoulder and talked about how she could not believe they were finally married. Adam smiled and squeezed her hand gently. They talked about their new home and the plans they had for the coming months, and both felt hopeful for a peaceful future. The road ahead was lined with tall trees and fields that stretched far into the distance. The sky slowly shifted colors as the sun began to set, leaving behind soft shades of pink and orange. Everything felt calm until Mira saw something strange in the side mirror. A black van was following them at a steady distance. She frowned and pointed it out to Adam. He looked back and felt a small wave of unease rise inside him. The van had dark windows and no number plate, and it stayed exactly behind their car without slowing or drifting. Adam tried to stay calm for Mira, so he told her it was probably nothing and maybe just someone going the same way. Mira wanted to believe him, but her voice held a soft tremble when she said the van had been behind them since they left the venue. Adam started feeling the same concern she felt, and he reached for her hand to reassure her. The peacefulness of the day slowly shifted into a rising tension, and both of them could sense it. The road became narrower as they drove further, and the trees grew thicker around them. There were no shops or houses nearby, and the silence of the road made the van behind them feel even more threatening. Mira looked at Adam with worried eyes and asked what they should do. Adam considered turning back or stopping somewhere safe, but there was nothing around them that looked secure. He told Mira that if they kept going they would reach a small fuel station up ahead, and once they reached it they could stop where other people were around. Mira nodded and tried to stay calm, though she kept glancing back at the van. After a few minutes the van suddenly sped up and came closer to their car. Adam felt his heartbeat quicken because the van was now only a short distance away. He gripped the wheel tightly and told Mira to hold on. Mira could see fear in his eyes now, even though he was trying to hide it. The joyful glow of their wedding day had faded into a tension neither of them understood. They had been married for only 30 minutes and still had their whole lives planned ahead, but something strange was unfolding on that lonely road, and neither of them had any idea that the reason behind the van would soon shake everyone who heard their story and leave the entire town searching for answers. The van responded by speeding up again. The quiet night that began with a peaceful wedding had turned into a terrifying chase that neither of them could explain. The van was no longer just following them. It felt like it was hunting them, and the reason behind this strange behavior remained hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed in a way that would shock everyone connected to their story. The moment Adam realized the same van had found them again, a chill ran down his spine because it meant someone was tracking them with a purpose that he could not understand. Mira tried to breathe steadily, but her fear was rising again, and she pressed her hands together tightly. The road ahead stretched long and empty, and the trees on both sides moved like dark walls shaping a narrow path. Adam told Mira to keep her eyes forward and trust that he would protect her. Mira nodded, but her voice trembled. The van behind them kept moving closer, and Adam felt the pressure growing in his chest as he tried to keep the car steady. Mira gripped his arm and asked in a worried voice why the van was acting like that. Adam did not know what to say because he did not want to frighten her more, but he also could not deny the fear rising inside him. The soft golden glow from the sunset had almost faded, and the road ahead was slowly sinking into evening shadows. Adam pressed the accelerator a little, and the car moved faster, but the van matched the speed without any delay. Mira looked back again, and her breath caught because the van was now so close she could almost see the shape of the driver, but the windows were too dark to make anything clear. Adam tried to stay focused and kept scanning the road for any sign of a fuel station or even a small shop, but the trees around them blocked everything and the narrow road felt endless. He whispered to Mira that they just needed to reach an open area where people were around, and once they got there everything would be fine. Mira nodded, but her hands were shaking because she could sense something serious was happening. Adam kept driving while trying to stay calm, but then the van suddenly swerved slightly to the left and then to the right, as if warning them or testing how they would react. Adam tightened his grip on the wheel and told Mira to hold on to something. Mira held the side of the seat and kept praying silently for help. The road curved sharply ahead, and Adam slowed down a little to take the turn safely, but the van behind them did not slow at all. It came right up to their bumper, and Mira let out a small cry. Adam felt frustration rising inside him because he did not understand why anyone would follow them on their wedding day. They had no conflicts with anyone and no history of trouble. Their life was peaceful and simple, so this situation made no sense. As they moved deeper into the wooded area, the light became dim and the shadows stretched long across the road. The silence of the surroundings made the fear stronger, and Mira felt tears forming in her eyes because she kept thinking something terrible was about to happen. Adam reached over with one hand and gently wiped the tears from her cheek while telling her they would be safe soon. He kept repeating that nothing would happen to them as long as they stayed together and stayed alert. Mira tried to take a deep breath and calm herself, but her heart kept beating fast. After a few more minutes the trees thinned slightly, and Adam finally saw a small sign ahead. It showed the symbol of a fuel pump and an arrow pointing right. A spark of relief ran through him, and he told Mira they were close to the fuel station. Mira turned to look and nodded quickly because she could also feel some hope returning. The van behind them still followed without changing distance, but Adam felt that if they reached the fuel station they would be safe among other people. Adam turned the car toward the narrow side road that led to the station. The van followed again without hesitation, which made Mira whisper that something was really wrong. The road to the station was even quieter than the main one, but after a short distance the bright lights of the fuel station appeared ahead. Mira let out a sigh of relief and leaned back slightly because she finally felt there was some protection. Adam slowed the car and entered the station area. A worker stood near the pumps and looked toward them with curiosity because their car entered at high speed. Adam stopped near the pump and stepped out quickly while Mira stayed inside trying to regain her breath. The worker walked toward Adam and asked if everything was fine. Adam tried to answer calmly, but his voice shook a little as he said a van had been following them since they left their wedding. The worker looked concerned and turned to see the van. The van did not enter the station but stopped near the road and stayed there with the engine running. The worker frowned and said it looked suspicious. Mira stepped out of the car and stood beside Adam while looking toward the van with fear in her eyes. Two more workers inside the station noticed the situation and came outside. They stood near Adam and Mira and watched the van carefully. One of them suggested that Adam should call someone he trusted or maybe inform the authorities because it did not look like normal behavior. Adam nodded and reached into his pocket for his phone, but before he could make a call the van suddenly reversed and sped away down the road, disappearing into the trees. Everyone watched it go and the workers exchanged confused looks. Mira felt weak from the stress and leaned against Adam for support while he wrapped his arm around her. The workers tried to make them feel safe by telling them that the van was probably just someone playing a strange trick or someone who realized they were being watched and decided to leave. Adam thanked them, but he still felt uneasy. Something about the way the van followed them did not feel random. Mira whispered that she did not want to go back on the road yet, and Adam agreed fully because he wanted her to feel safe before they continued. The worker offered them seats inside the small shop attached to the station and brought them water to drink. They sat quietly trying to calm down while the workers kept looking outside from time to time. After a while, Adam and Mira began to regain their composure. Mira rested her head on Adam's shoulder and told him she felt safer now. Adam held her hand and tried to smile, even though the worry in his chest had not fully faded. He told Mira that once they left the station they would take a different route toward the place they planned to stay for the night. Mira agreed because she did not want to return to the same road where the van had followed them. When they finally felt stable enough to continue, they thanked the workers and got back into their car. Adam checked the road carefully before driving out. The night sky had grown darker and only small lamps along the station lit the area. The main road was empty and quiet, but Adam drove slowly and kept checking the mirrors. Mira also watched the road carefully because she did not want any surprises again. For a few minutes everything seemed normal and Mira started to relax again. She leaned back in her seat and told Adam she hoped this was the end of the strange experience. But just as they reached another stretch of empty road, Mira noticed a faint set of headlights approaching from behind. Her heart tensed and she sat up straight. Adam looked into the mirror and his breath caught because the headlights seemed familiar. The vehicle moved closer slowly and Mira whispered with fear that it might be the same van. Adam felt a cold rush inside him as the vehicle drew nearer, and as it reached a certain distance they saw the dark shape again. It was the same van with the same dark windows and the same silent, aggressive presence. Mira began to tremble and asked Adam why it had returned. Adam had no answer, and the fear inside him turned heavier. He told Mira to stay calm and he pressed the accelerator because he wanted to create distance when she said she did not want anything to happen to them. The night air felt heavier now, and even the sound of the engine seemed sharp and loud in the silence around them. Adam kept increasing the speed, hoping to lose the van, but every time he pushed the car faster the van responded with the same rhythm. It stayed behind them like a shadow that refused to break away. Mira looked back again, and whispered that she could see something written on the front glass, but the letters were too blurred to read. Adam glanced into the mirror, but the darkness around them hid everything clearly except the bright lights of the van. They passed a small abandoned shed on the side of the road, but nothing else. It felt like the whole world was empty except for them and the van chasing closely behind. Mira asked Adam if they should stop at another place, but Adam shook his head because stopping in an isolated area did not feel safe at all. He kept searching for any sign of a house or open area, but it seemed like the route they had taken was far from any populated place. After a few minutes he saw another curve ahead, and he slowed the car a little to take it safely. The van slowed as well, but stayed dangerously close. Mira felt her heart pounding loudly in her chest, and kept holding Adam's arm because she feared the van would ram into them at any moment. The moment they completed the curve, Adam saw a small wooden structure beyond the trees. It looked like an old bus stop shelter that had not been used for many years. The paint had worn off and the roof looked damaged. Adam considered stopping there for a moment, because at least it was a landmark, but he quickly decided against it. Stopping there would trap them in an isolated spot, and the van could corner them easily. He kept driving and whispered to Mira that they needed to stay on the move until they reached a larger road. Mira nodded, even though she could barely think clearly from the tension. She glanced at the clock on the dashboard and realized only a little time had passed since they left the fuel station, yet the weight of fear made it feel much longer. She whispered that they had been married for only a short time and already something strange had taken over their day. Adam squeezed her hand and told her that they would survive this and everything would be fine. The road ahead began to slope slightly downward, and Mira noticed the trees thinning again. Adam felt a small wave of relief because thinner trees usually meant they were near open fields or farms. If they reached a farm, they could ask someone for help. But just as hope began slowly rising, the van suddenly moved to the side and came up beside them for the first time. Mira gasped loudly, and Adam gripped the wheel tightly. The van stayed parallel to them for several seconds, and even though its windows remained dark, Adam felt the pressure of unseen eyes watching them closely. Mira whispered that whoever was inside wanted them to know they were not leaving. Adam nodded and kept his focus. The van then drifted back behind them again and continued following like before. The brief move beside them felt more like a warning. Adam began thinking of ways to escape. He considered taking a sharp turn if he found a split in the road, but at the moment there was none. He kept driving and tried to remain calm because panic would make things worse. After another few minutes, the road opened into a larger field area, and Adam saw a faint light far in the distance. It looked like a farmhouse light glowing above a porch. He pointed it out to Mira, and she felt a small bit of hope again. If they could reach that place, maybe they could find help, or at least call someone in safety. Adam increased the speed slightly and aimed toward the distant light. The van remained behind them but did not attempt to move closer yet. It kept the same pace, as if watching their decisions carefully. Mira whispered that the van felt like it had intelligence behind it, and it was not random. Adam agreed because everything about the chase felt planned. He asked Mira if she remembered seeing anyone unusual at the wedding who might have been watching them, but Mira shook her head. All the guests were familiar, and there had been no strangers at the venue. As they neared the farmhouse light, Adam noticed something odd. The light did not flicker like a normal porch lamp. It seemed almost too steady and too bright for a simple home. The closer they got, the more Adam began to feel unsure if it was truly a house or something else. When they finally reached the place, they realized it was not a farmhouse at all. It was a small facility building with a large metal fence around it. A tall pole stood in front with a bright industrial light that illuminated the entire area. Mira felt her hopes sink again because the building looked abandoned. The gate was closed with a rusty chain, and there were no signs of people around. Adam slowed the car as they approached because he did not want the van behind them to catch up while they were stuck in a dead end. He turned the car sharply and drove past the building to get back onto the isolation of the road. Mira whispered that maybe they should return to the fuel station, but Adam told her that going back might bring more danger because the van seemed to anticipate their moves. The van behind them slowed down near the building, then followed again as if confirming they had chosen not to stop. Mira felt her throat tighten as she wondered why the van was so determined. Adam tried to think clearly and told Mira that they needed a plan. He said they should look for a junction or a crossroad so they could take an unexpected turn and maybe confuse the van. Mira nodded and kept watching both sides of the road for signs. After another long stretch, the road finally opened into a wider junction. One road went left into a darker wooded path, while the other went right toward an area where small hills stood in the distance. Adam had only seconds to choose. He quickly turned right because the hill area looked more open and maybe easier to navigate. Mira held onto the dashboard as the car shifted quickly. For a moment, it seemed like they had succeeded in creating distance between them and the van. The headlights behind them shrank slightly. Mira allowed herself a small breath of relief, but then something unexpected happened. The van suddenly sped up with a force that felt unnatural. It closed the distance almost instantly. Mira grabbed Adam's arm and cried out because the van was nearly touching their bumper now. Adam pressed the accelerator harder, but the car was not built for high speed on rough roads. It shook lightly as they moved faster. Mira felt tears rising again because she did not understand why this was happening or what the van wanted. Adam whispered calming words, but his voice showed fear now too. The tension kept building until they saw something ahead that neither expected. A second vehicle stood parked in the middle of the road. It was positioned sideways, blocking the entire path. Adam hit the brakes and the car skidded slightly. Mira covered her mouth from shock. The van behind them slowed, but did not stop completely. Adam looked at the parked vehicle and felt alarm rise because it had no lights on and no one stepped out from it. He whispered that something was very wrong and they needed to think fast. Mira kept shaking her head as she stared at the blocked road. They were trapped between the silent van behind them and the unknown vehicle in front. Adam tightened his grip on the wheel. He knew they had only seconds to decide whether to turn back or try a different path. The night that began with celebration had turned into a terrifying mystery, and the reason behind this strange pursuit was about to come closer than they expected. Adam stared at the vehicle blocking the road and tried to think clearly despite the fear rushing through him. The van behind them slowed but did not stop, which made the situation feel even more threatening. Mira kept shaking her head in disbelief because she could not understand why two vehicles were now involved. Adam whispered that they had to move before the van behind them decided to close in completely. He looked to the right and saw only a steep hill. To the left there was a narrow dirt path that led between two clusters of trees. It looked risky and uneven, but at that moment it was their only possible escape. He told Mira to hold on tightly as he turned the wheel sharply and guided the car onto the dirt path. The car bounced roughly as the tires hit uneven ground, but Adam kept pressing forward. Mira leaned forward, gripping the seat because the ride was shaking her. The van behind them reacted instantly and followed them onto the dirt path. The second vehicle remained in place, blocking the main road as if it was only there to prevent them from going forward. Adam realized then that the chase was not random. Someone had planned this route, and everything felt part of a bigger intention that they did not yet understand. The dirt path twisted sharply through the trees and branches brushed against the sides of the car. Mira felt her heart pounding faster than ever, and she whispered that she feared the path might end at a dead end. Adam told her they would deal with it if it happened, but they had to keep moving until they found a safer area. The van was still behind them, though the rough path made its movements less smooth. Adam used every bit of skill he had to keep the car steady while bouncing over rocks and uneven ground. The path opened briefly into a clearing, and for a moment Adam thought he saw a faint flicker of a house light far on the other side. He pointed toward the light and Mira nodded quickly because it gave them a small sense of direction. As they crossed the clearing, the van behind them came closer again. Adam pressed the accelerator even though the car struggled on the rocky path. Mira whispered that she hoped the light ahead truly belonged to a house and not another trap. The trees closed around them again and the dirt path narrowed until it barely fit the width of their car. Branches reached across as if trying to grab the sides of the vehicle. Adam slowed slightly to avoid damaging the wheels, but the van behind them also slowed, making it clear that it was not going to leave them alone. The tension in the air grew thicker with every passing second. Mira kept glancing behind them and whispered that she could see something new. She said the van had a small symbol on its front glass, but she still could not read it clearly. Adam kept driving until the path finally widened again into a sloping hillside. They could see the light more clearly now. It did not look like a house anymore. It looked like a cabin or a small guard hut of some sort. Adam did not feel completely safe about approaching it, but they had no choice because the forest path would end soon. Mira pointed out that the van behind them was moving faster now since the ground was smoother again. Adam pushed the car forward trying to reach the cabin before the van closed in. As they neared the cabin, Adam felt a strange unease. Something about the building seemed neglected and empty. The door was slightly open and there were no signs of movement around. Mira whispered that it looked abandoned and she did not want to go inside. Adam agreed and decided to drive past it rather than stop. They turned slightly to go around the cabin, but just as they did the van behind them accelerated with a strong burst of speed. It was now only a short distance away, and Adam realized they had no more space to outrun it. He pressed the brakes suddenly and turned the wheel hard to the right, hoping to confuse the driver behind them. The car spun lightly on the loose dirt and Mira cried out as she held the dashboard for support. The van swerved to avoid hitting them, which created a few seconds of distance. Adam seized the moment and drove toward a lower slope that led down toward another clearing. They moved fast, but the slope was uneven and the car bounced dangerously. Mira closed her eyes for a moment because she felt dizzy from the rough motions. When they reached the clearing, Adam saw a narrow paved road at the bottom of the slope. This road looked more stable and safer than the forest path. He guided the car toward it and hoped that once they reached the road they could speed away. The van was still following but had slowed a little on the uneven slope. Mira opened her eyes and felt a moment of relief when the car finally hit the paved road smoothly. Adam pressed the accelerator and the car moved forward quickly. For a moment it seemed like they were gaining distance. Mira looked back and saw the van still coming but at a slower pace. She whispered that maybe they could finally escape. Adam nodded and felt a small spark of hope returning. The road ahead stretched long and open with small hills on both sides. Adam believed that if they kept going they might reach a bigger road soon where other cars would be present. But their hope lasted only a few moments. Up ahead they saw flashing lights approaching from the opposite direction. Mira sat upright in fear. Adam slowed slightly trying to understand what the lights were. As they got closer they realized it was not an ordinary car. It was another dark-colored vehicle similar to the one that blocked their path earlier. Mira felt her stomach twist and she whispered that they were surrounded again. Adam looked around desperately for escape. To the left was a steep slope leading back into the thick forest. To the right there was a ridge that dropped into a rocky area. Both directions were dangerous. The vehicle approaching slowed and stopped in the middle of the road, creating another blockade. The van behind them also reached the paved road and closed in slowly. Adam realized they were trapped from both sides now. He whispered calmly to Mira that she needed to stay strong and trust him. He tried reversing but the van behind them blocked any backward move. Mira felt tears slide down her face because the situation seemed impossible. Adam looked around one more time and saw a very narrow trail on the right side of the road. It led downward, but the slope looked risky. If he turned too fast they might slide or the car might lose balance. Mira saw the same trail and whispered that it was dangerous. Adam agreed but said staying here was even more dangerous. He turned the wheel sharply and guided the car toward the narrow trail. The front wheels dipped forward and Mira grabbed Adam's arm with fear. The car slid down the slope, but Adam controlled the speed carefully. Loose stones rolled under the tires but the car did not flip. Mira kept her eyes squeezed shut until the car reached a flatter area. When she opened them she saw they had reached another small clearing surrounded by tall rocks. The van behind them moved toward the trail but stopped at the top because the slope was too narrow for its size. The second vehicle remained on the road, watching them from above. Adam felt some relief because they had at least created a barrier the vehicles could not cross easily. But the relief was short-lived. The engines above them stayed running, and both vehicles remained parked at the edge of the slope as if waiting for something. Mira whispered that she did not understand why they were being chased. Adam was silent for a moment because he also had no answers. He tried calling someone again, but his phone showed no signal deep in the rocky area. He put the phone down and told Mira they needed to think of their next move. They could not stay here because the vehicles above them might try to come lower or find another way around. Mira looked around the clearing and pointed to a narrow passage between two rocks. Adam looked carefully and realized the passage might lead to another path. It was narrow, but they could walk through it if they left the car behind. He whispered that they might need to continue on foot. Mira hesitated because leaving the car felt risky, but staying inside it felt even more dangerous. She nodded slowly, and Adam opened his door quietly. He stepped out and helped Mira step out as well. The night felt colder now, and the air carried a strange quietness. They began walking carefully toward the passage between the rocks. Mira held Adam's hand tightly. Behind them the engines on the ridge continued running, but the vehicles did not move. Adam felt the weight of eyes watching them, even though he could not see anyone. As they entered the narrow passage, they heard a sound behind them. It was a small snapping sound like a dry branch breaking under pressure. Mira turned back quickly with fear in her eyes. Adam also turned and saw something that made him freeze for a moment. A figure was standing near the edge of the ridge above them. The figure did not move, but stood watching them silently. Mira whispered, asking who it was. Adam could not answer. The figure remained still, but the presence felt heavy and purposeful. They did not know if the figure belonged to the van or the other vehicle, but something about the silent stance made the fear inside them grow deeper. They turned away and hurried through the passage, hoping to find another path. The passage opened into another slope that led deeper into the rocky hills. There were no lights and no signs of houses. Only darkness and the faint sound of wind passing between the rocks. Mira felt tired and frightened, but she kept following Adam. The deeper they went, the more isolated the world around them felt. Adam stopped for a moment to listen for any noise, but all he heard was the distant hum of engines. Mira whispered that she felt something was watching them. Adam squeezed her hand and told her they needed to keep moving until they found a safer place. They had no idea that the reason behind the chase was closer than ever, and the truth would soon unfold in a way that neither of them expected, and it would change everything about their story.